Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. Today we're talking about used car values in December, and joining me to talk a little bit more about this is Cap HPI's Head of Valuations, Derren Martin. Hello, Derren.
Hi, James.
Lovely to have you on, Derren. Always good to have a chat. Right, let's just dive straight in then, because it's been the theme of all of the year, really. What has been the monthly fall or rise? What have you seen in December?
So values have dropped during December in our live products. They've dropped by 1.4%, which is about £240 on average. It's off the back of what happened in November, which was a 1.2% drop. And the important thing to note sort of straight away is that is normal for the time of year, and it isn't a crash. It's the actual average since we introduced our live product in 2012 is 1.4%. Over the last 5 years, the average is 1.2%. So it's kind of bang in line with all of that that's been happening previously. The difference this time, I guess, is that it's coming from a much higher starting point, but it hasn't knocked much of those increases off the scale. So still, you've got values that are over 27% up on where they were at the start of the year.
Yeah, I think that's the point, really, isn't it? Because we've been seeing a lot of social media activity from dealers, possibly predicting a crash, but it's like you say, it's seasonal, and values have been so high during the year anyway that this is nothing to worry about, is it?
No, it's off the back really of retail demand dropping, which always happens at this time of year. You're not really going to be going out and buying a car couple of weeks before Christmas unless you really need one. You kind of put those big ticket purchases on hold for this period, and then you start again in January with that. You're only going to go out if it's a necessity purchase. So dealers as well haven't been out there stocking up particularly. They've stocked up previously. Certainly the big players out there have stocked up in September and October ready for January. So they've not been out there buying so much. And there's a lot of people who have just been sort of watching to see what happens with values. So when you're just watching and not buying, there's less competition. So values drop, but they haven't dropped dramatically. As I say, some models have come down, some have stayed level, and some have even gone up still. So there's still lots of moving parts in the market.
So let's just talk a bit about December a little bit more in detail. So you mentioned there that some cars have risen, some have fallen. I mean, what have been the sort of the main headline? What's jumped out for you?
The two strongest sectors are city cars and MPVs. They've come down, but only by very small amounts, really, and they're probably reasonably priced cars. Aren't sort of overpriced, particularly compared to other vehicles. They've obviously gone up in value as well, but compared to SUVs, MPVs look good value still. And city cars for your little run around, and it kind of goes back to that necessity purchase. Maybe people are buying those because they've got a sold order, and there's some good deals to be had. So they're the ones that have really stood out for me, along with electric vehicles, which are actually the only fuel type that has gone up in value this month. But again, there's some that have gone down, some that have gone up. But I think we mentioned this probably every month that we've spoken, that electric vehicles have had a real sort of shot in the arm from COP26, from just what's happening with the environment this year. So electric vehicles are a lot more in the public eye now, and the consideration has gone up. So some of those have gone up in value. Sort of on specifics, you've got some city cars that have gone up are Fiat Panda, Kia Picanto, gone up by sort of 3% or £150. Skoda Citigo's gone up as well. MPVs, we're actually seeing some diesel MPVs going up, which is probably not what you'd expect, not what you'd predict, but yeah, some diesels, the Fiat Fiorino, Hyundai iX20 gone up, Nissan NV200, probably looking good value. Not many diesel cars around now, it's a lot less part of our data. So yeah, they've performed quite well. And on the electric vehicle side, you've got vehicles like the I-Pace, Nissan Leaf that have gone up in value, but not inconsiderably either. 3% increases for those. So yeah, it's been another interesting month. It's actually harder to do valuations at these times than it is when everything's going up, because you have to really look at all the detail within everything to see what's going on.
Yeah. Do you think we'll look back on 2021 and say that was the year where used electrics really sort of took off, and the attention of them just went through the roof?
Without a doubt, the consideration, the volume's gone up, and so the volume within our data has gone up, even though overall volumes are down about 25%. Electric vehicle volumes have gone up; they've doubled, gone up by 100%. And so, yeah, there's definitely more of them around, but also more consideration. And certainly, when you're driving around the streets now, you can't not see a Tesla when you're driving around. Their registrations have gone up. So in the new car market and the used car market, the consideration has definitely gone up considerably this year.
Yeah. I mean, do you think things like the recent changes to the government plug-in car grant, I mean, do you think that's going to have a big effect on the used market, or do you think that's actually just going to improve things really for the used car buyer?
It's going to be an interesting one, because we're already seeing some manufacturers that are dropping their list prices below the new threshold, which I think is £32,000. So we've seen Vauxhall do it on the Corsa and the Mocha. If they drop the prices, there's obviously the potential to have a knock-on effect for used values. So there may be an impact from doing that. When you look at PCPs, though, maybe the removal of some of the grant doesn't have a massive difference on your monthly amount. But there are now less cars that are eligible for the grant. So yeah, it remains to be seen how it works, but there could be a bit of an impact for those manufacturers that are reducing their prices.
Let's just look back over 2021, and I fear you're just going to sort of say a collection of everything, all the superlatives that you've used during the year, but it's December. Let's just sort of look back over the year. I mean, what have been the highlights for you, and I mean, what are you taking away from what you've been seeing?
It's been unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, I think I've said before, throw any superlative at it you like. We never saw this coming. We thought it might be strong coming out of the initial lockdown. The values had kind of dropped towards the end of last year after being strong for most of last year following the first lockdown. As soon as we got into sort of March, it was stabilising after those couple of months of drops. As soon as you got into April, May, June, it absolutely went through the roof. And the increases, we've never seen them before. Thousands of pounds put on cars. Really, really crazy times. We kept on thinking it couldn't carry on, and it did. And in the end, it lasted for 7 or 8 months, and it went on well into sort of September time. I think September saw the biggest increases we'd seen from a pound notes point of view. And then it's just dropped away slowly towards the end with a couple of months of downward movements. But I can't stress enough how unusual this year has been, and I doubt we'll ever see it again. I really don't think you're going to have your own car that sat on the driveway worth a third more than it was. So you got a £10,000 car worth sort of a few £1,000s more. Some of them are 50% more. So your £10,000 car worth 15 grand just doesn't happen. Your car, you always know it's going to depreciate. Some of those prices are now so high that they can't continue to go up, but I think they could stay strong. But yeah, they can't. So we won't see those increases again. It's just been a real sort of black swan event.
Yeah, I think the feeling this time last year was, we were in lockdown, but things were going to improve in 2021. But 12 months on, we're now staring at the face of Omicron and other variants. Does that sort of change your views of 2022? I mean, is it easy to predict what's going to happen?
I think it's never been more difficult to forecast values of cars going forward. Probably, I mean, it's almost easier to predict what will happen in 3 years' time than it is what's going to happen in a year's time. Because in 3 years' time, there's going to be a lot less volume of 3-year-old cars out there, and the market will probably be quite strong. You look at what's going to happen next year. There's not going to be a tsunami of new cars coming through, at least for the first half of the year. All the manufacturers are reporting issues still with semiconductors and other components. You've got things like COVID outbreaks in those plants that produce those semiconductors, and even the packaging for the semiconductors and all of those sorts of things. It's really, really unknown. But There's not going to be a lot of new cars coming through. There's not going to be a huge increase. When they do, it's not going to be all in one go. And obviously that will mean less used cars being generated. So we think it's going to stay strong into next year. I think we've seen values drop the last couple of months. You might see values going up by those amounts, that small amount in January and February, because the market should be strong. Omicron is a complete unknown at the moment. We don't even know where we're going to be this time next week with restrictions, hopefully not lockdowns. I think if there are lockdowns, the car industry is much better set up to cope with that, with the online dealing. They've done really, really well, all the dealers. And there's also the potential that, I mean, Boxing Day is traditional, that you're bored of your family, you go online and you look for something like a holiday or a new car. You're probably not going to be looking at a holiday this year, so there may be more people looking at cars. So I think demand will be strong. Whatever happens in January with restrictions, I think demand will be strong. If we did unfortunately go into a lockdown, I think when we emerge from that lockdown, again, the market would be really strong with pent-up demand. So there's not really negatives from me at the moment with regards to that. As we move further into next year, there's more of a risk of values dropping as new car supply gets back to normal.
Yeah, it really does hinge on that new car supply, really, doesn't it? And I think until that starts, we start to get a bit of an idea of the supply chain. I mean, values are going to stay a little bit high, aren't they? And we're probably going to be chatting a little bit more about high valuations, really, aren't we? So
I would expect so, yeah. And it's very different by different manufacturers and different models and even trims and all those sorts of things. So you've still got some cars that are on 18 months lead times and some cars that you can't order. So there's still a lot, but there are some brands that are less affected. So they probably, and you can see that in the registration stats for some of the Far Eastern brands.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Derren, thank you so much for chatting to us about December. Very much looking forward to having the same conversation in 4 weeks' time in January to see where we are. But for today, Thanks very much indeed.
Okay, thanks, James.
Okay, that's it for today's Car Dealer Live. See you again very soon. Bye-bye.